Assalamu alaikum students, this is your teacher Muhammad Umar Khatak for the course Project Management. This is our 16th lecture and chapter number 4. And today the topic of our discussion is Negotiations and Management of Conflict. Conflict. This chapter is about conflict. It is also about negotiation, the skill required to resolve most conflicts. The question arises, why should there be so much conflict on project? One of several causes is that conflict arises when people working on the same project have somewhat different ideas about how to achieve project objectives. But why should such a disagreement occur? Is there not one best way? There may be one best way, but exactly which way is the one best is a matter surrounded by uncertainty. Most conflicts have their roots in uncertainty, and negotiation is a way of managing the resultant risk. Therefore, this chapter is about risk management, about dealing with conflicts that often arise from uncertainty. It has sometimes been defined as the process which begins when one party perceives that the other party has frustrated or is about to frustrate some concern of his. While conflict can arise over issues of belief or feelings or behavior, a party to the conflict will be satisfied when the level of frustration has been lowered to the point where no action, present or future, against the other party is contemplated. When all parties to the conflict are satisfied to this point, the conflict is said to be resolved. There are, of course, many ways to resolve conflict. Brute force is time-honored method, as is the absolute rule of the monarch. But the rule of law is the method of choice for modern societies, in spite of occasional lapses. Conflict resolution is the ultimate purpose of law. The nature of negotiations. Negotiations. The favored technique for resolving conflict is negotiation. What is negotiation? The process through which two or more parties seek an acceptable rate of exchange for items they own or control. Negotiation is a field of knowledge and endeavor that focuses on gaining the favor of people from whom we want things. We do recognize that such terms as mediate, conciliate, make peace, bring to agreement, settle differences, moderate, arbitrate, adjust differences, compromise, bargain, dicker, and haggle are synonyms for negotiate in some instances. Most of the conflicts that involve the organization and outsiders have to do with property rights and contractual obligations. Organizations, like groups, consist of interdependent parts that have their own values, interests, expectations, and goals. Each unit seeks to fulfill its particular goal, and the effectiveness of the organization depends on the success of each unit's fulfillment of its specialized task. Just as important as the fulfillment of separate tasks is the integration of the unit activities such that each unit's activities aid or at least do not conflict with those of the others. The general misconception is to find a solution such that no party can be made better off without making another party worse off by the same or more amount. That is a Pareto optimal solution. Approaching intra-part project conflicts with the desire to win a victory over other parties is inappropriate. The project manager must remember that he or she will be negotiating with project stakeholders many times in future. During the negotiation process, an ethical situation often arises that is worth mentioning. The ethics of the situation require that each party in the negotiation be honest with the other, even in situations where it is clear there will be not be further work between the two. Methods of negotiation. There are three methods of conflict resolution used in project management: partnering, chartering, and scope change. Partnering. Project partnering is a method of transforming contractual relationships into cohesive, cooperative project teams with a single set of goals and established procedures for resolving disputes in a timely and effective manner. There are many reasons beyond avoidance of litigation that firms enter partnering arrangements with each other. For example, diversification of technical risk, avoidance of capital investment, reducing political risk on multinational projects, shortening the duration of the project, and pooling of complementary knowledge, among others. Generally, relations between the organization carrying out a project and a subcontractor working on the project are best characterized as adversarial. The parent organization's objective is to get the deliverable at the lowest possible cost as soon as possible. The subcontractor's objective is to produce the deliverable at the highest possible profit with the least effort. These conflicting interests tend to lead both parties to work in an atmosphere of mutual suspicion and antagonism. Indeed, it is almost axiomatic that the two parties will have significantly different ideas about the exact nature of the deliverable itself. The concept of partnering has been developed to replace this atmosphere with one of cooperation and mutual helpfulness. But, but the basically adversarial relationship makes cooperation difficult in the best of cases. Partnering. Steps involved in partnering process. First, the parent firm must make a commitment to partnering. Select subcontractors who will also make such a commitment. Engage in joint team building exercises and develop a charter for the project. Second, both parties must implement the partnering process with a four-part agreement on joint evaluation of the project's progress, a method for resolving any problems or disagreements, acceptance of a goal for continuous improvement, also known as total quality management for the joint project, continuous support for the process of partnering from senior management of both the parties. Finally, the parties commit to a joint review of project execution when the project is completed. Each step in this process must be accompanied by negotiation, and negotiations must be non adversarial. The entire concept is firmly rooted in the assumption of mutual trust between the partners, and this assumption too requires non adversarial negotiations. Finally, these articles focus on partnering when the partners are members of different organizations. We think the issue is no less relevant when the partners are from different divisions or departments of the same parent organization. Identical assumptions hold, identical steps must be taken, and inter party agreements must be reached for partnering to succeed. The concept of partnering, however, goes far beyond two party agreement between buyer and seller or interdepartmental cooperation on a project. The use of multi party consortia to pursue technological research objectives is common. The agreements between groups partnering on large endeavors are often referred to as charters. A project program charter is simply a written agreement between the project managers, senior management, and the functional managers who are committing resources and people to a specific project. Bear in mind, the charter may take many different forms. Typically, it details the expected deliverables, often including schedules, budgets, and resource commitments. It attests to the fact that senior management of all relevant organizations, functional managers, and the project manager are on the same page, agreeing about what is to be done, when, and at what cost. Note that if there is such an agreement, there is also an implication that none of the parties will change the agreement unilaterally, or at least without proper consultation with the other parties. Most projects do not have charters, which is one reason for observing that most projects are not completed on specification, on time, and on budget. The signed off project plan or set of action plans can constitute a project charter, particularly if senior management has signed off on the overall mission statement and if it is recognized as a charter by all parties to the plan. A somewhat less specific project charter in which the various members of the partnering team sign a commitment to meet design intent, complete contract without need for litigation, finish project on schedule, timely resolution of issues, manage joint schedule, keep cost growth to less than 2%. Of course, to meet the underlying purpose of a charter, even these less specific terms assume an agreement on the design intent, the schedule, and costs. Scope change. No matter how carefully defined at the start, the scope of most projects is subject to considerable uncertainty. There are three basic causes for change in projects. Some changes result because planners erred in their initial assessment about how to achieve a given end or erred in their choice of the proper goal for the project. Technological uncertainty is the fundamental cause factor for either error. Scope change. Other changes result because the client, user, or project team learns more about the nature of the project deliverables or about the setting in which it is to be used. An increase in user or team knowledge or sophistication is the primary factor leading to change. A third source of change is the mandate. This is a change in the environment in which the project is being conducted. As such, it cannot be controlled by the project manager. A new law is passed, a government regulatory unit articulates a new policy, a trade association sets a new standard, the parent organization of the user applies a new criteria for its purchases. In other words, the rules of conduct for the project are altered. At times, mandates affect only priorities. The mandate in question might move a very important customer to the head of the line, for some scarce resource or service. Whatever the nature of change, specifications of the deliverables must be altered and the schedule and budget recalculated. Obviously, negotiations will be required to develop new agreements between the parties at interest to the project. These negotiations are difficult because most of the stakeholders will have a strong interest in maintaining the status quo. If the proposed change benefits the client and increases the cost of the project, the producer will try to sequester some of the user's potential benefits in the form of added charges to offset the added cost. The client will, of course, resist. All parties must once again seek a Pareto optimal solution, always a difficult task. This would be the end of the lecture. Thank you.